Welcome back, everybody. So each week we are going to have a Q&A based on the video. So the Q&As will always be with real students who are already in Soul School so that you can see that this is a real thing. And so today we have Andre Zarate.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It was really good to listen. I actually aligned with a lot of the things you talked about as an educator, as someone who has been a teacher for the last decade and so. And so one of the first questions that I wanted to ask you is you talked a lot about remembering who we are and trying to get to that place. Can you talk a little bit about what does it mean for us to remember who we are as people? Like, I think sometimes I think about myself and I'm like, well, I already know who I am. And so when I hear sometimes that quote where you're saying like, well, we have to remember who we are, I'm just curious about like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So to remember who we are, for a long time, there has been a lot of distortion and confusion on this planet that has put us into boxes and identities and stories about who we are. And I don't mean you don't have a personality. Your soul has a personality, right?
Mm,
But I mean to remember who we are, we turn deep inside our hearts, ourselves. And it requires turning off a lot of external noise because it is so noisy out there. All the stories of your this identity and that thing and why this should make you a victim and that thing that's bad. And it's really loud. But if you can quiet all of that down for a time and turn inside, there is a voice inside you that remembers across lifetime, that remembers your soul, that remembers what it is that you came here to do. And mine started to come back. It's always been there, but we just can't hear it because it's too
mhm,
loud. But I started to be able to hear that a few years ago. And one of the first things it told me is that I had to leave that job.
mm,
And so that truth of who we really are is often not who we think. I thought my identity was professor and all of these things. But that remembering voice is like, nah, you are a teacher, you are a guide, that's true. But not the way you have constructed it to be using all your narratives and stories and intellect, right? And it takes time. It takes time too. But I would say it is some of the most important work we can do. That spending
yes.
time clearing, I call it ungunking the filter,
Mhm,
right? Because there's all this, we are filters. And sometimes our soul is right there just begging to be
mm.
heard. Sometimes I feel like when mine finally came through, it was yelling for me to listen, like,
Yeah.
oh, you can hear me. Okay, I have a lot of things to say. Because I had been disconnected from that truth of myself for so long that by the time I finally cleared out enough of the noise to be able to
Right.
listen, it was
Right.
so happy to
Yes.
be reunited. And it's never gone. A lot of times people say lost soul. I
Right.
think disconnected is better,
Okay. Yeah.
because it's never really gone. But I was sure disconnected from it for a long time.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
The second question I have for you is, you talked about we're right on time to just get on this journey and to really start this journey of like getting to know ourselves and to unlearn a lot of the things that we have learned in our lifetime. And so I'm curious about what kind of person do I need to be in order to continue and to be a part of this journey? And I'm thinking about like, I know that there are different traits and things, but what kind of what should I be open to being and doing in order to be a part of this journey?
I am hearing the root of the question.
Mhm.
Authenticity. And I'm going to get a little biblical for a moment, if I may,
Yeah.
because that is I was raised in a few different things, but that is one of the traditions I was raised in. And I've really come to understand authentic expression is the resurrection. When we were talking about that resurrection or that kind of energy of rebirth or being reborn, or how do I remember? So one thing is authenticity, to not be afraid to express yourself as you really are. And that may change over time, and that's okay. But so many of us have so much fear around overthinking and what if this and what if that and what if ah ba 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 ba. Just let it go and authentically express yourself, and it's going to piss some people off, and that's fine.
Mhm.
It's not about you, you know? And the more we can do that, the more those kind of stories and things loosen. I don't know how to say this. A little bit of authentic expression creates a self-reinforcing loop where then it becomes easier to do that. So that's one piece. And then things to be open to. I would say when you hear something new, don't disregard it immediately, because a lot of the stories we've been trained in, take it or leave it. If this doesn't resonate, that's okay. But a lot of the stories we've been trained in, you are you may already know, or maybe in the process of becoming more and more aware that those are not true, right? And so there's going to be this time where you begin hearing lots of new information. And that new information, it can be really easy to dismiss immediately. No, that can't be. Turning inward, looking at those new pieces of information from your own inner knowing. And then the last piece this is not a comprehensive list, but another piece I want to add that was really important to speak from my own experience is forgiveness.
Mhm.
Because when I first began remembering who I really was, it was upsetting to be like, oh no, I've given so much of my life force to this system that's built on greed and corruption and money and, programming kids into worker machines. Oh no. Oh no. And so I had a choice in that moment. I could wallow in that indefinitely, or I could be gentle with myself and look at that and say, oopsie, and then move forward toward the new thing that I do want to create. Right. And so there's kind of a self forgiveness piece that I think is really, really critical for being able to move forward.
Mm. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important, the self-forgiveness piece too, because we're going to be making mistakes along the way and wrestling and grappling. So I think it's really important that we have that as a key pillar in this process.
Very good. Okay, thanks for being here, everybody. May you move through the world transmitting love and joy, and every step further and further and further, closer and closer and closer to the liberation of all sentient beings. See you next time.